Okay, today we are making a little video that shows my method of doing Navajo-Ply. It may not be all that different from what you've seen on Navajo-Plies, but it may have a few tips that will help you when you're going to make your own. I like to use Navajo-Ply when I've spun a single with painted roving or top, because it keeps the color variation together and you end up with a three-ply yarn that's truly variegated, not barber pulled all over. First thing you do is tie your leader to your single and then make a loop in the single so you have somewhere to start, because we're going to be making a chain. I'm going to just get started here. My left hand pinches above that loop and then moves towards the orifice and then back towards my body. I like to keep my right hand right here next to my body, and the left hand does all the moving forward and back. The left hand not only pinches above the loop, when it's coming back, the little finger lines those, actually holds back the single that's coming from the spool and lines all three plies up so that you get a really nice even ply. Doing this with your little finger prevents that third ply from wrapping around the other two, and you end up with this beautiful, consistent, and even three-ply yarn. Another thing that some people like to do when they're doing a Navajo-Ply is when the left hand is coming back, to just give a little rub where that loop is. Some people think that it helps to kind of smooth it out so it makes it disappear, and it can. And on some fibers it's really helpful. This fiber, it isn't really necessary because it doesn't show. So I just kind of look at how it's looking. If that bump is looking like it's showing, I might give it a rub. Otherwise I'll just let it go, and usually they disappear pretty well if you're doing a fine yarn and your fiber is kind of burying it on its own. The right hand stays back and just holds the loop. I open it up as the left hand comes near, and I grab that next loop. It's very relaxing. It's not a struggle. It's rhythmic, and it produces a really nice yarn. Whenever you have rhythm, you're going to have consistency. If you want longer loops, you can bring your arm back here and make them, really long this way. But for me, that's really uncomfortable. My shoulder starts to hurt, and it's just not a comfortable position for me. So I prefer to keep my right hand right here next to me and just work at it this way. Navajo-Ply is really neat because it takes a single ply on a spool and turns one ply into a three-ply yarn by chaining. And it's not the same as a regular three-ply yarn because you have these little loops in the yarn. I'm going to switch my hook. But it has its uses, and if you use the right kind of fiber, at first glance, you may not even be able to tell that it's a Navajo-Ply. Fibers that are really good for Navajo-Ply are fibers that have a close crimp, a tight crimp, like the soft fibers with a tight crimp, like merino or rambouillet. Softer, finer fibers. Ones that are not suitable are fibers that are wiry and long, like mohair, because your loops won't fully bend. It's just they're too wiry, and the loops will all show.
Is it a balanced yarn when it's finished, or is it over-plied looking?
That's a good question, because when when you do a Navajo-Ply, because you want to let your singles rest a while so they're not too squirrely, it's going to look, when it's properly plied, and here I'll show you, it's going to look over-plied. But that's only because the single rested. And once I wash this yarn, it's going to be balanced. My angle of twist on this single, you can't probably see it, is about 45 degrees. So what I'm looking for is a 45-degree angle of twist on my ply. And then I'm going to have a nice balanced yarn. So that is a good question, but yeah, you can't really test your ply by just, your balance by doing this, because it's going to look like it's over-plied. But it's not, because your angle is the same as the angle on this, and it's going to be a very nicely balanced yarn.